In these times during COVID, when we're all sitting at home, it's sort of like a ray of light that we get to watch these amazing sessions when we can't all be together. It certainly brightens up my evenings.
आज पेंडेमिक में हम डिजिटली जयपुर लिटरेचर फेस्टिवल कर रहे हैं और मुझे लगता है कि हमारे सामने श्रोता नहीं है, हम आपस में बात कर रहे हैं, लेकिन उस फील को, उस उमंग को महसूस कर सकते हैं कि हजारों लाखों लोग हमसे जुड़े हुए हैं, हमको सुन रहे हैं और कहीं ना कहीं कोई एक सार्थक हस्तक्षेप हो रहा है.
People who came online to view and listen to our incredible speakers from across the world, we were able to continue in our tradition of ensuring the free flow of knowledge and information.
On behalf of Namita Gokhale, William Dalrymple, Sanjoy Roy, and all of us at Teamwork Arts, I welcome you to this session of Jaipur Literature Festival Online Series 2021. Today we present Nora, Retelling A Doll's House, Merete Helle, in conversation with Supriya Dravid, presented in partnership with the Cultural Relations Platform, Creative Europe, ELLE India, Embassy of Denmark, and the delegation of the EU to India. Merete Helle's book, Nora, is a retelling of Henrik Ibsen's iconic play, A Doll's House, first staged in 1879. Translated into English by Stewe Claeson, the book explores Nora's character, tracing her childhood dreams, aspirations, and inquisitive nature. Lyrical and poignant, the story traverses Nora's journey through Norway and Italy and examines the deep impact her father and husband had on her psyche and on the way she viewed herself and the world. In conversation today with Supriya Dravid, Merete Helle discusses the trajectory of her writing and explores the nuances of a woman's path to liberation and its reflection on the illusions of love and choice as illuminated in Nora. Merete is one of Denmark's most popular writers. Her debut was the short story collection, Towards Another Calm. She is also the author of the award-winning and widely successful novel, The Beauty of the People, and its acclaimed sequel, We Knew It All, which went straight to the top of the charts post its release. Supriya Dravid is the former editor-in-chief of ELLE India. She is the current editor of AJIOLUXE, a soon-to-be-launched luxury e-commerce portal by the Reliance Group. Her novel, A Cool, Dark Place, was published by Penguin Random House. All our sessions that have been broadcast till now have been archived and are available on this site in the Mughal tent venue, and also on our Facebook and YouTube channels. Please do feel free to ask questions by clicking on the comment section and typing in your question. Ladies and gentlemen, we now present Nora, Retelling A Doll's House, Merete Helle, in conversation with Supriya Dravid, presented in partnership with the Cultural Relations Platform, Creative Europe, ELLE India, Embassy of Denmark, and the delegation of the EU to India. Over to you, Supriya.
Thank you, Sharupa. Hi, Merete. Good to be in conversation with you.
Yes, I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
I want to first start with the very process of writing. And I read one of your interviews where you said the writing is what is very easy for you. You know, it's your solace. Tell us a little bit about accepting and coming to terms with this realization, because I know you tried a lot of things and you eventually said that this is what makes my nightmares stop. Tell me a little bit about this process of discovery.
Yeah, when I was young, I worked with theater and I worked as a dancer, but it seemed like everything I did came to a halt. You know, I had problems, it didn't progress. And then I went in 1985 to the Women's Conference, UN Conference in Nairobi. And I went with some friends, photographers and filmmakers, and we were going to make like a multimedia narrative about the conference. And then all our equipment got stolen. And I went home with my notes and I thought, maybe I should write it instead, because I can still write. And I wrote a short story, in fact, about my experiences. And it got published. I sent it to a magazine, it got published. And then I was asked to do another novel. And I then used these 2 novels to apply for the Danish Writer School and got in. It was like, a friend of mine calls it a green light journey. You know, everything just goes as it is. And I thought, maybe this is where my talent is, because this is where I can work and have, where people appreciate what I can contribute with.
Tell us a little bit of how you got started in the very idea of Nora. I mean, it's a retelling of Henrik Ibsen's iconic play called A Doll's House, and was first staged in the 19th century. What gave you the idea to start and retell the story in your own way?
Yeah, this is a very special book because it was, I was asked to do it together with 2 other Scandinavian writers, Vigdis Hjorth and Claes Østergaard. We were asked to each write a novel on Ibsen. And I was so sure that the others would pick A Doll's House, but they didn't. They picked other dramas. And then I said, oh, this is really what I want to write, because it resonated with me, with my own life. I had also been divorced, left a marriage in a different way, of course, but still there were some things I could relate to. And then I started, the first thing I did was to read the drama. I had seen it on stage, I had seen it on television, but I had never really read it. And what I realized was that there's so much information about where Nora comes from, about her childhood, about her youth, her life before this event taking place, because the play is only like a short week during Christmas. But in the writing, Ibsen tells us so many details about her life. And I thought, I want to dwell on that. So I wrote down everything he tells us, also between the lines, and with my knowledge, of course, of the Norwegian society in the late 1800s. For example, he writes that Nora, she misses her in her childhood or in her youth, being with the maids in their chamber. That's one of her best memories, she says in the play to her friend. But she's not supposed to be in the maid's chamber. And the maids are not supposed, they will only be in their chamber when they sleep. Otherwise they will be in the kitchen. And I thought, this is strange. Why does he write that? And then when you read about Ibsen himself, when he was young, he worked in a pharmacy and he lived there, and he had to pass through the maid's chamber to come to his own room. And he got pregnant while for him passing the chamber. And I thought, so what is he telling us with this? So in the book, there is a scene where Nora is enjoying her sexual experiences with the maids. And that was very common in the period. You were not supposed to have sexual relationships before marriage. And so the maids in their chambers would have relations with each other. And it's a very different thing from what we think today about it is homosexuality. It was more like young people playing. So I have this scene, but it's a scene I think that Ibsen has showed us. He has pointed at it very discreetly, but it's still there. And then I also had to decide which city she comes from. It doesn't say in the play, and there's nothing in the language where you can see where she comes from. But Ibsen, in one of the very early versions, wrote that they came from part of Norway. And then I looked at that part, and I chose a city called Molde. And I went there, and I made a reservation. I wanted to make a reservation at the hotel, and we were coming Friday night. Everything was booked, and I thought that was really strange. But when I arrived, I realized, maybe you know, that you have the ferry going up to the Northern Cape. If you travel in Norway, that's a beautiful thing to do. You take the boat going up to the Northern Cape. And it stops in that city every Friday. And it's a beautiful, beautiful place. It's one of the most beautiful places in the world. So I walked around, I looked at the flowers, I looked at the stones. In Denmark, we have a very different landscape. We don't have granite. They have granite in Norway. So I looked at the stones, the colors, the surfaces, to describe the environment Nora grew up in.
I want to also talk to you a little bit, your interpretation and portrait of the character, Nora. I mean, it's of course a real core and the crucial focal point of the novel, and you definitely expand on it. But it also complements the play's action, and you've expanded on several of its characters as well. Do you want to touch a little bit on that as well?
Yeah. So I tried to at the same time be faithful to Ibsen, but then also to make the characters more complex, because a novel is more complex than a drama. It's two different things. So you can have a larger complexity in the novel. And I also read all the other of Ibsen's plays, because I think that many of his characters, and he uses the same type of person in different plays. So I built them up also like he would build a person. And I also took sentences and special words from Ibsen's plays. So the whole book has a resonance. It's a little old-fashioned, but that's because I drew something out of his plays, both for the characters and in the language. But I had to make my Nora. I had to create my person. And of course, I think that what always happens to a writer is that you take who you are, and you take your own experiences, and you weave them in the character. And I think that Nora, she's a part of me that's longing for something, dreaming about things. I can spend a lot of time dreaming about doing things that I never get done, and I think that's like the part of me I have used for creating Nora. But then I also, as I said, I had been divorced, and I had to see, why is it that Nora leaves her husband in the deep foundation of it. And I came to the conclusion that she doesn't leave her husband because he's a terrible person, or because I think maybe he could change, but the person she leaves is the Nora she has been in her marriage. When she lives in the marriage in an illusion of love. And that is something I have known from myself, that you create a narrative of your marriage that it is so beautiful, and that you're a good person because you sacrifice yourself. Nora, she always sacrifices herself, but the sacrifice gives her an identity. So she has an identity of I'm a good person who sacrifices everything for my husband. But that identity is false because he's a different person. And when she realizes that, and when she sees that she has lived on an illusion, she has to leave herself. She has to become somebody else and leave that person behind. And that is, in my optic, why she leaves in the end.
I want to talk a little bit about her transformation in a marriage. And few women in the history of theatre are as famous as Miss Nora Helmer. But her transformation from being a submissive woman in a sham marriage to a woman who goes her own way, it unfolds in 3 acts. How long did it take for you to build on the story in a step-by-step fashion?
Yeah, so that's really interesting, because when I started reading the drama, what I saw is Ibsen describing her somehow differently than I had experienced her on stage, because she borrows this money, and she makes a false accreditation. She lies, but then she has to pay back the money, and she works in secret. She tells her husband she's making Christmas decorations, and the cat tore them apart, so that's why they're not there anymore. But in reality, she has been working. So all the time throughout the marriage, she has a secret identity of a woman who needs to make a lot of money to pay back the debt. So she's like a double person. And I think maybe that on stage that often disappears, that part of her, because you need to see her in this short time. You need to see her as a weak person growing strong. But I see her more as a person with a kind of double identity. The sacrificing sweet Nora, but then also the hardworking woman who's secret. She cannot show that to anyone. And I think that's very I always like complex characters. I always like double characters. I think that's what makes us interesting, because most people are like that in reality. Like, we have some kind of doubleness, and that's always interesting.
But it's also a novel about women's lives in the 19th century, right? And the double life, the perspective is also about romantic dreams and shattered illusions, and also eye-opening experiences, with the power that we can change everything,
Yes.
So what, guided you through this journey of, in a way, you're talking about Nora, but you're also talking about women and in that time?
Yes. Yes, I have used some of the, there was the liberation of women began that time, but when Nora was written, it was like, I would say, the high peak of patriarchy.
Yeah.
And Ibsen, as a person, fought against that. Like, he tried to make women get into the writers' union. He fought for women, and he had a very, very clever wife. Who supported him all through. So I think that he saw it quite clearly, that the suppression of women made them ill, some mentally ill, or suffering. So I think he gives us like a possibility to see this is where change maybe began. But it was also, the high time of what we call patriarchy. And so I have described Nora as an intelligent young girl, but who's not allowed. She's not allowed by her father to study. She's not allowed to read certain poetry. She's all the time kept back, and the frustration it gives her. And then I went also, because Ibsen wrote the play in a small town in southern Italy, in Amalfi. And I went there, and I went to the room where he had written the play. It's a hotel called Hotel Luna. It still exists. You can book the room. It's number 15, and it's a beautiful, beautiful room. And I was there, and I imagined how it was. I imagined his thoughts, and on the wall of the hotel, there's a plaque saying that this is where Ibsen saw the Tarantella dance.
Okay.
And the Tarantella dance is a wild dance. It's like a hysterical dance with women, and it's only women doing it, and they will be dressed very simply in a white gown, and it's extremely provocative to watch. But it's like, how do you say, when you dance it, it's like you cure yourself. You heal yourself in the dance, in this wild dance. And I imagine, as a man coming from Norway, where you are very formal, it must have been mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And Nora dances the tarantella in the play, so I write the scene where they see together the tarantella for the first time in Amalfi. So like I weave together what I imagine Ibsen's experiences have been, and also the play, but giving it more depth from also the point he talks from. And I imagine that he has, seeing this liberation in the tarantella, he has supported that. He has seen how it can, a different kind of woman from what you're supposed to be in Norway.
I think what is interesting is about Nora's character is that it unfolds in the story about coercion. And I think it's a passing phrase by a housemate. And then Nora thinks about it and says, but she thinks, hey, listen, no one is forcing me to do anything. So I think in many ways, I don't think she realizes what she was doing and what role she played in the society. Rather, when you spoke about patriarchal society, I think she accepted that was the norm. She didn't realize that she was, she's doing what she wants to. She's not really doing what she wants to do, but she's also not realizing that that's also because of the societal norms at that point of time that has, in a way, coerced her to think that way.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right, and I think it's, for me, I'm 55. I have seen things change, and those changes made me realize that the society I grew up in was strange. There was many things we couldn't do, and it's different today. My children has been brought up very differently than myself, and their opportunities have been very different. But I never realized it until it changed. I had a physics teacher who put all our girls in the back of the room because we couldn't understand anything anyway. And we learned about, colonialism, which was maybe a bit of a mistake, but we were the good ones. We were always the good ones because we were the ones liberating the slaves. But we forgot, we didn't learn about the 200 years where Denmark had slavery. We just learned about when we stopped it. It was all a history, but you're a child and you learn these things and you say, oh, this is what society is like. And then suddenly different voices come and things changes on a I think a structurally very deep level, and you have to see your own history as history and as something that has formed you, but maybe you don't want anymore. And that's also some of these considerations I have had Nora live, because she also experiences a change in society and suddenly realizes that she has other possibilities.
I want to ask you a question before I move on to the audience questions. You came from a very personal space in your mind when you started writing this. Did you know that this was the book you wanted to write, or or as often as it happens, sometimes the book writes itself, the play writes itself? You're just a messenger in the process. You're just guiding your hand through it all, and things just take its own course. I mean, I've realized that with me. We'll have a thought, I'll write it, but eventually there's some other superpower that takes over you and is pushing those words out. Did that happen to you during the course of writing this?
Yeah, I think it always happens, you know. It's like you need to find first the voice,
Yeah.
and that can take a long time. But as soon as the voice is there, and it will come to me when I live beside a very large forest. So when I walk in the forest with my dogs, suddenly a voice in my head comes, and it's a narrator. But it can take a month or 2 months or longer before it suddenly comes. I just, you know, I try to think, I try to imagine, I read, and then suddenly this voice comes. And when the voice comes, it's for me, it's quite easy. Then it's like it takes over and it talks. But when I write by hand.
Wow.
I always write by hand. I like the ink flowing out of my pen, and I have these books that I fill with words. But then after, I do a lot of editing. I will take it from the handwritten pages into the computer, and then I will read it sometimes, and then I read it aloud for myself, and then I read it aloud for my husband, and I go back and I edit, and the editor comes in with some notes and things. So I may go through it 10 times, and that's a more, how do you say, intellectual process, because you see, how is the form? Does it work? Is it balanced? Is it clear and understandable, of course? So it's like there are different phases of it, and it's always very funny because, you know, the first phase where I like walk in the forest and think, I don't care about anything. The house is just such a mess. But and then when I write, it's you know, I stop cooking, I stop doing anything. But when I start editing, because it's like I can only edit maybe 2 hours a day, everything gets clean. I clean all the time, and I cook. So my husband is always very happy when I get to that. but it's it's like I've written many books, and I know myself now, and I let this process be, and like I dwell into the different phases, because it's a different quality of thinking and living. Like when I write, in the months that I actually write, I will wake up at night, and I will have, you know, I will word the whole pages in my head during the night. And so if I wake up, I just start working. So I just let them come. And then in the editing phase, I wake up at night and I'm like, what do I do now? I don't have anything to think about. So it's like, yeah, different.
I'm going to move on to the audience questions now. And there's a question here from Vidya that says, what were the unique lessons you learned while writing about Nora?
Yeah, I think, like I said before, because when I sit here now and say, Nora realizes love was an illusion, like I did myself, but that's an afterthought. You know, that's not, I didn't know that while I was writing. It's like it came, and I think maybe in these nightly processes, and after I had written about Nora, I suddenly realized, oh, that was me as well. I lived the illusion of love. So now when I say it, it sounds like I had this thought and I wrote it, but it's not like that. And that is the biggest thing I learned, because I think when you leave a marriage, when I talk about my husband, it's my new husband. When you leave a marriage, it's very easy to say, well, he was like that and he was like that, but in this process, I realized this is what I did. This is what I did, and this is what I did, so it didn't work. So it's like it helped me understand my part of the marriage and the divorce that it had to end with. Yeah.
I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to combine two questions and ask you. It's from Zoya and Momina. Zoya asks, do you think that you would have written the book any differently had you been writing it today? And as a follow-up, Momina asks, what would the Nora of 2021 be like?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, because I think it would always be different. because when I write, it's, you know, it's a flow of experience, both past experiences, but also present experiences, and what you see today, you know. So it would be different, and I think our experiences with the COVID, it would change something. Before we had COVID, I had started on a book, and I'm quite far into it, and it takes place in the 1980s.
Okay.
So I realized that it was suddenly difficult for me to write this book without, I mean, I couldn't put anything in from our present experiences because they're so different, and they cannot know it. We didn't know it. We didn't know anything, and so that is somehow difficult to keep out the experiences we have for the past 18, 20 months and write something that's clean historically. So I think if I had to write Nora today, it would definitely be different. Yes.
Kim asks, what was your hardest scene or chapter to write?
Yeah, okay, I will tell about it because I used to live in Italy for many years, and I love Italy, and it's beautiful. And I thought, okay, and when I came to Italy first, you know, you come from Scandinavia, which is very gray and cold and somewhat bleak, harsh, wonderful in its own way, but Italy is so full of smells and sun and
people and just their general persona.
Yeah. So I thought that would be the easiest to write, but it wasn't. It was so difficult. I started again and again. The arrival of Nora and Helma in Italy, their first experiences. I couldn't grasp it. And then I read something by Dickens when he was in Italy. And he described the rain. And then I thought, of course, they will arrive in pouring rain, because that's also a part of Italy. And you cannot, so they arrive in the pouring rain, and they're just like, everything is cold and damp. And then in the evening, the sky clears, and suddenly you have the sun of Italy and the colors and the smells. So it's like, I take the reader with Nora and Helma, like in the journey coming to Italy, instead of just presenting, oh, now the sun shines and it smells nice. It was too difficult. So yeah, that was the most difficult scene.
There's a question here from Matt who asks, what are the things you have to keep in mind while writing about or rewriting characters which have previously been written about?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you have to somehow be bold. You have to be able to say, this is my Nora. And maybe people have a lot of ideas about what Nora is like, but I have to write my Nora. And maybe somebody will disagree, but she has to be alive for me and like full for me. So somehow you need a little courage. I think you always need courage as a writer.
And some amount of fearlessness, I think, more than anything else, right?
Yeah. You know, you have to like never think about what other people will think. You have to like make the characters true to themselves. You have to make them, you know, trustworthy.
Yeah. And as a writer, you have to believe in them yourselves, right? In many ways, I think you're investing so much of emotional energy onto these characters who are living in someone else's head and now in yours. Yes. And you bring in your experience on building that framework, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So you have to like, be able to feel them.
Yeah.
And you have to be bold enough to say that feeling is good enough, you know. Yeah.
I think you're building many layers of skin yourself, right? I think you're just And I think, I'm sure when you're writing your new book now, you're shedding old skin and restarting,
Yeah.
you know, and you're looking at different voices, different structures, narratives. And I think in many ways, I mean, you're drawing on your own emotional experiences. I mean, that's probably also what took you to Italy, right? I mean, you said Ibsen went to Amalfi to write it. Was that something that drew you saying, hey, listen, should I give it a shot? Or why did you choose to go to Italy to write?
Yeah, well, I think what I have experienced is that the more I go into myself, the more personal I become, the more other people recognize it.
Yeah.
And that somehow makes me often, you know, happy in the sense that, okay, we are not different from each other. You know, our emotions are the same, our also illusions, and it's not only good emotions, but we are very much the same. So the more I dare look into myself, and the more I dare understand, why did I do this, and why did I feel this, and why did I go that way that maybe wasn't good for me, the more I can have other people understand themselves. And I think it's both what's, you know, I think it can be a hard life to be a writer. I'm alone a lot, and sometimes you get criticism, which is so terrible.
It's not easy, yeah. It's a lonely process. Yeah.
This experience I have of giving something to other people, you know, giving them a possibility to understand themselves. That's like a satisfaction, a great satisfaction for me as a writer. And it might just be little things, but when I succeed with that, that's what I really want to.
You mentioned that you visited India. Is there any Indian writer whose work you particularly like?
Yeah. I interviewed, like you interviewed, I interviewed Arundhati Roy a few years ago in Denmark, and I really like, you know, some of the images from her first books. They just stayed with me, and I think that's a very great gift she has given to me. It's like images I carry around, senses of nature and people that I carry within me. Yeah.
And my last question is, what books can you recommend to your fans? I mean, if they have to read perhaps somewhat the kind of books that you enjoy, what would you recommend to your fans?
To my I think personally, I like to read many different things. So I will recommend that you read both poetry and large epic novels, and maybe also something lighter, like a detective story sometimes, that you don't close yourself in a certain kind of literature, because I think it all speaks together. Like if I read poetry and then I maybe read a detective novel for entertainment, it starts speaking together, and I see both things more clearly. So, I mean, I could say many names, but I think if I should recommend something, is to be a really broad reader. And I also read a lot of nonfiction. Right now I read about fungus, and it's the most interesting thing I ever read. You know, and I read a wonderful story by a woman called Kasia St. Clair, The History of the Thread. Amazing novel about the thread. So it's like, and then I will go and read some poetry. I'll read Rachel Cusk, I'll read Agatha Christie. You know, it's like, I think to be a broad and open reader gives you a lot of experiences. Yeah, joy.
Thank you so much, Merete. It has been wonderful talking to you. I'm going to hand it over now to Sharupa. to wind up today's conversations.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Merete. Thank you, Supriya, for that wonderful session. That was so warm and nice. Thank you so much. And that reading list that you gave was truly, that's really it, that, to broaden the canvas as much as possible. Thank you all for being a great audience. On behalf of all of us, please do stay safe, and we shall see you back here on the 6th of August with the book launch of Song of Draupadi, Ira Mukhoti in conversation with Suneet Tandon. This will be on JLF First Edition at 7 p.m. IST. And A Passion of India, Javier Moro in conversation with Mohini Gupta. This will be on Jaipur Literature Festival at 8:30 p.m. IST. See you. Good night.
Thank you.
In these times during COVID, when we're all sitting at home, it's sort of like a ray of light that we get to watch these amazing sessions when we can't all be together. It certainly brightens up my evenings.
आज पेंडेमिक में हम डिजिटली जयपुर लिटरेचर फेस्टिवल कर रहे हैं और मुझे लगता है कि हमारे सामने श्रोता नहीं है, हम आपस में बात कर रहे हैं, लेकिन उस फील को, उस उमंग को महसूस कर सकते हैं कि हजारों लाखों लोग हमसे जुड़े हुए हैं, हमको सुन रहे हैं और कहीं ना कहीं कोई एक सार्थक हस्तक्षेप हो रहा है.
People who came online to view and listen to our incredible speakers from across the world, we were able to continue in our tradition of ensuring the free flow of knowledge and information.